Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that's fascinated by all the fun and games and finances of the music world, as explained each week by me, Steve Lemack, and him, Stuart Dredge, if you want an easy guide to what's happening in the music biz and how it all works and how the figures stack up. Here we are twice this week. I'll explain more later on. Also, our first episode, it's a slightly different one because there's one or two news stories which we've seen which are interesting, but we're going to hold over till next week because we're going to move straight to any other business this week as provided by yourselves. So this is the point where, well, if you have any questions for us about the workings of the industry or its complicated money trail, drop us a line, email address coming up shortly, because we quite often do one of these specials where we pitch into the postbag and try and answer some of your inquiries. I think this one's for you, Stuart, this first one. This is from Richard Engler, who says, "Hey, Stephen Stewart, I often check the credits section on tracks. A large percentage have either no or incomplete information when you look at the credits on Spotify. Does this mean that the credits aren't logged on Spotify's system? And if so, then where do the royalties go? I've seen it on covers numerous times. So a large amount of potential revenue either stays with Spotify or is distributed to the wrong people. Is that what happens? Does the money go to the black box like it does with some royalty distribution? I think this is one of those questions where, when there's probably a quick answer, but there's probably a much more in-depth answer, which has a dozen different layers to it. But thank you, Richard. If the credits are missed off, if they're not, the songwriters aren't listed beneath a track on Spotify, what happens then if we take it point by point? If there is a large percentage of songs that have no or incomplete information, does this mean it's not logged on Spotify's system? And in which case do people not get paid?
Yeah, so this is it got to the heart of one of the big problems for the music industry. It's bigger than Spotify, any one platform. It's a long time industry issue. This is about metadata, which is a word. If you go to music industry conferences, you'll hear this a lot. We've got to sort out our metadata problems.
Okay.
So essentially, to go back to start at the beginning, when a track's uploaded to Spotify, it's the person who uploads it. So that's either a label or distributor who gives Spotify the credits info. So it's up to them. So music publishers don't upload songs to Spotify. No. Songwriters don't. So it's really up to whoever's uploaded the track. And so in the case of a label, they should put the publisher in and songwriters. If it's a distributor, it's down to the artist who's using a distributor to put it on. And like you say, often they don't. I mean, I've seen covers like the most famous Beatles and Bob Dylan tracks where they haven't put the songwriter credits in. If you look at the credits on Spotify, you think, this is ridiculous. It's obviously a cover of that famous Beatles song. How can Spotify not know?
Yeah.
But all it's showing us is what's been uploaded with the data. So the problem here, and I will get to what happens, the problem here is it's about matching songs, so like the compositions, to recordings, if that data hasn't been provided. So they're correct. The money, Spotify has the money. It wants to pay the money out. So there's no kind of sense of streaming services holding on to the cash here. But they don't know who to pay it to. And there have been historically been lawsuits about this kind of thing, about all the music on Spotify that no one knew who the publisher was. So it varies. So in the US, for example, there's a body set up called the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. And Spotify and the other streaming services transferred all there. And the phrase here is historical unmatched royalties. So that is money that should have gone to publishers, but they haven't been matched to the recordings. And it was about just under $400 million a few years ago. This was this historical money that hadn't been paid out. And this organization started trying to match them. And you can actually go to the MLC's website. And if you search for historical unmatched royalty, you can see exactly how much every service has paid. So Apple paid about $148 million. Spotify had $146 million. That's how much money they had that they just haven't been able to pay out. So that's that. That in the US, that's what happens. They've got this. They've tried to sort this out by setting up a body. It's also a big part of the work that collecting societies do, trying to match recordings to works, to songs, to get some. And this is where he mentioned the phrase black box in the question. This is where you hear this phrase black box royalties, which is potentially royalties we don't know who to pay them to. And in the collecting societies world, sometimes those are then, after a certain period of time, whether it's like 2-3 years, they'll be shared out based on market share often. So if publisher X has 10% of the publishing market, they'll get 10% of that black box. And the controversy around that is, well, if a publisher's got that much of the market, it probably has all its data. It's more likely to have its data sorted than an independent publisher or songwriter. Mm-hmm. So the argument is maybe a lot more of these black box royalties are for independent publishers and songwriters than the big guys, but the big guys might be getting that money. So if you hear people arguing about the black box, that's often what they're arguing about, is it whether it's fair to, how do you divide it up? So in a sense, yeah, this money just sits there. Whether this money is sitting within Spotify or whether it's within a collecting society, it sits there, unable to be paid out until someone either works out, okay, this song relates to that recording, so we can pay these many royalties out to those publishers. Or they just get to a certain time and they pay it out based on market share, for example. Mm. But this is one of the areas, actually, we talk about AI a lot in a negative context, don't we? About AI making music.
Yeah.
But the people we had a Music Ally Publishing Summit recently, and there was a big panel on AI, and people were saying, actually, AI can be helpful here. AI technologies can help us scan all the data we get from a streaming service and try and match works to songs, to recordings. So there's a bunch of companies now saying, well, maybe we can use AI for this to kind of get to the heart of who wrote what song and to pay them. So we could see an improvement. We could see actually that kind of technology helping Spotify to pay out that money rather than it.
Which, I mean, can you, I presume, if you find that one of your songs has been uploaded by the distributor, but the credits have failed to appear, can you rectify that situation? Or do you have to take it down and put it back up again?
I think so. If you're the artist, you can. Well, it depends on how your distributor works, but yeah, you would then say to the distributor, "This is the meta it's missing. Can you re-upload it?"
Right.
On Spotify's website, there's actually a whole service they have called Spotify for Publishing. So publishers can have an account with Spotify, which includes the ability to send their data to the company and say, "These are the works we represent."
Right.
Because that's the other thing. It's one thing knowing who wrote a song, but you also need to know, well, what publisher they signed to. And also important is the splits. So say 4 people have written a song. To pay out that money, a streaming service needs to know, well, that songwriter has 40%, that songwriter gets 20%. And that is another minefield of, again, at this conference we had, there was a big discussion about how that data sometimes isn't there. Like people might write a song in a room together and it gets released, but they haven't agreed who gets 40%, who gets 20%.
Yeah.
There was actually a talk. Someone was talking. It was about YouTube royalties. This guy from a company called Orpheum, which collects YouTube royalties from musicians. He said as much as 30 to 40% of the publishing royalties can get stuck in the system. So like tens of millions of dollars, because the splits for a song don't add up. Like they've been told, oh, so and so's got 40%, so and so's got 30%, so and so's got 40%, and that's 110. And in that case, if you're a YouTube, you go, well, I didn't know to pay here. This is not right.
Yeah.
So there's two strands of discussion here. So one strand is, okay, how do we match songs to recordings and pay the money out to the right people? And the other is actually people talking to songwriters and artists from the very first moment they're writing a song to think about this and to say, right, think about your metadata, think about how the splits are, write it down, make sure that whatever happens with this song, that the information goes with it on who wrote it and who their publishers are. And there's a lot of activity going on around that, because that's the other kind of maybe the gap, is that if you're a musician, you're kind of writing a song and being creative. You don't necessarily want to sit down with a notepad and thrash out who owns what share of it. Mm. But it turns out if you do that, that's like to stop you being in a situation where you're not getting paid for it later on because someone like YouTube or Spotify doesn't know who to pay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised, having thought about it and thinking about it now you've explained it, that there aren't more historical lawsuits going on between songwriters who, have gone back and said, no, actually, I'm thinking of somebody like the Police or somebody. No, I wrote. Someone say, actually, I wrote 40% of Message in a Bottle, or actually, thinking about it, I wrote 90% of Can't Stand Losing You, or whatever it is. Do you see what I mean? I mean, that's a minefield. I mean, there are enough court cases anyway amongst musicians, aren't there, who say, oh, actually, that's my song and I should get paid for this. But given the complications of this now.
Well, also, I mean, if you we talk a lot about catalogs being sold, don't we? So a songwriter. So when a song is uploaded to, when a recording is uploaded to Spotify, one of the songwriters may be signed to a certain publisher, or may have 10 years later, those rights may be owned by a different publisher, or they may have sold them to an investment company, or So again, it's just a logistical minefield of complexity, and so in a sense, the streaming services are rarely the villains here, because they want to pay that money out. There's really no benefit. Like if they're holding on to it, it's just in an account being held on to. They're not doing it. They're not kind of using it.
No.
They want to pay it out, but they don't want to pay it out to the wrong people. And that's the other thing, I think, is that I saw a session recently at a conference, and they were talking about one of the ways people try and commit fraud in music is by saying, well, those royalties are mine. There's a famous case on YouTube a couple of years ago where a bunch of Latin American artists, I think including Bad Bunny or his songwriters, like their royalties have been claimed by someone else who said, yeah, we collect. So there's a lot of scope for kind of mistakes and problems. But this is why you might go to Spotify and say, who wrote this song, Knocking on Heaven's Door? Oh, they don't know. Well, I do. But in that case, it will be the person who uploaded it who didn't include that information.
Okay. Thank you very much, Richard. This is from Matt in Sudbury, just down the road from where I grew up. Matt, it's not there anymore, but there used to be an outdoor swimming pool in Sudbury, which I used to go to in the 70s. Although more importantly, I bought my copy of Identity, the X-Ray Spec single, at a record shop in Sudbury. Anyway, hi, Stephen Stewart. You've spoken a lot about how touring costs for artists have increased and the effect this is having on ticket prices. But I was wondering why ticket prices can vary so much at the same venue when costs are presumably the same. Maximo Park and Suede, for instance, have both put tours on sale today. Both bands are playing at Cambridge Corn Exchange, lovely venue, next February. But a standing ticket for Maximo Park is £36.50, and for Suede, it's £45.50. So they're both 5-piece bands, so presumably will have similar costs to put the tour on. But also a quick Google says that the venue has a capacity of 1,400. So doing the maths, says Matt, if they sell out, that means Suede will be making an extra £12,600 that night. No criticism to either band, adds Matt. I'm a fan of both, and you're guaranteed a great show from both of them. But I'd love to have your thoughts on where the extra 12 grand a night is going. Thank you, Matt in Sudbury. I did think of emailing Dids Hammond, which is a name you might remember. Dids was a member of Cooper Temple Claws, and then he was in Dirty Pretty Things with Carl Barat. But he's now one of Suede's co-managers, so could have found out. Dids, where's the extra 12k going? But might have been construed as being a bit rude. Anyway, to be honest, I think it's not the specific examples, although we'll get to those in a second. But I'm going to try and explain it, Matt, in slightly broader terms. And I will say this: prepare for this answer to be more complicated than you may have thought, because there are so many factors behind how ticket prices are set, and they're all quite interlinked, to the point where when I was drafting an answer for this, I found myself going round and round in circles, but we'll give it a go. Let's start with the 2 gigs you mentioned. So think about all the variables for a start. Amongst them, how much will, these are the questions that people are asking themselves that goes in the process of where do we set the ticket price? How much will an audience pay to see the band? Which is to say, what are they worth? What's the market rate for them? So think about that. That's one question. What's the biting point where your ticket price makes as much money as you can, while at the same time you're still confident that you'll sell out the gig? That's the balancing act that you have to get right, which will also take into account, how much money the bands are looking to make themselves, and what do they think they're worth as well? Because a band might think, well, we must be, if they're worth £30, surely we're better than them. We should be charging £40. But yes, think about where the price point, the perfect price point is. That's in the conversation. And what's the paycheck for the band going to be at the end of a tour? So they will then have a conversation. And when I say they, there'll be a conversation between the manager of the band and the agent and the promoter, who will all have, views on what the ticket price should be. While obviously at the same time, the manager will be saying, well, it's going to cost us this much to do the gig. And that's where you have to start taking a whole nother raft of variables, because just different bands will have different size crews. For a start, Maximo Park might be, going around with 3 people. Suede might have 5. They'll be spending different amounts of money on the production of the show. I mean, I'm not saying Suede or Maximo Park will have confetti cannons or pyros, but, which obviously would add to the bill. But certainly, as I say, Suede might have a bigger crew. Suede might want to travel in a nicer, more expensive tour bus. Or one of the bands might be in a Premier Inn. One of them's in the Malmaison. You kind of don't know, but it's all that sort of stuff that will affect the cost to the band of going on tour. And as I say, when it comes to crew, are you going to take a guitar tech and a drum tech? Are you going to have a sound man and a lighting person, or just the sound man? Are you happy to let the in-house lighting guy or person do the lights for you and shave a little bit off your budget? How many people are on that tour? And if certainly at the bottom level, if your tour manager can drive and also double up as guitar tech, you can save some money, because that's one less person who's part of the bill that you've got to pay. So when you hear stories, particularly as bands starting out, of managers going out on tour with their bands, it's not just to make sure that they're behaving themselves. It's probably because the manager of the band is doing some of the driving, so they don't have to pay a driver. So that's sort of cost. How am I doing so far? You with me so far, Stuart?
I was with you until I got distracted by thinking of Suede and the Premier Inn. But yes, that all makes sense so far. Yeah.
So these are all the variables. So there's so many different variables when it comes to totting up how much it's going to cost a band to go on tour. Right. So as mentioned, conversation then. So the manager and the agents, they'll have an idea of what the costs are going to be, what the ambition for the tour is, I guess, and then this will get discussed at a meeting of the main players, the promoter, the agent, and the band manager, possibly. For this, I contacted our secret agents, who, for the uninitiated, our secret agent is a very experienced live agent who has worked with a lot of bands, big and small, so is well placed to give us information on this. But they said, when it comes to setting the ticket price, and I'll quote them, there are many ways to do this, but mainly it's decided between all parties, band, agent, promoter, when discussing the offer. Obviously, you will have an idea as an agent what is needed to pay for the band to go on tour with all their associated costs. So crew, transport, accommodation, etc. But it's obviously not just the band and their costs that needs to be covered by the ticket income. It will be all the aspects of the show. So to add to what you have to pay the band out of the ticket price to cover their costs, you also have to take into account, particularly if you're an outside promoter, venue hire, PA and lights, brackets, engineers, relevant staff, insurance. You've got to pay for the insurance. There'll be the dressing room riders, catering, and the marketing of the gigs. So think about all that as a till roll. As I say, if you're an in-house promoter, you don't have to pay some of those costs. But if you're an outside promoter, if you're Live Nation or Kilimanjaro or AEG or whoever it is, then you'll need to rent the venue as a starting point. But those are the costs. In fact, our inside source went on to say the bigger the shows, the bigger the production costs, hence the higher ticket prices. Still with us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've now got this glazed look of, oh crikey, how much of this is there?
Yeah, it's detailed, but it's all very logical. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Carry on. How much?
Bigger gigs, obviously, more money to be made, but also more risk to be taken by the promoter. You have to take that into account. And again, this is why it's so important to get the ticket price right. It's got to cover all the costs, but one wrong move, particularly on a big arena gig, and you are in so much trouble because if an artist gets over ambitious or overconfident and attempts to play a venue that's too big for them, or the venue's the right size, but the ticket price is too high for the fans, then you don't sell out. And of course, then the promoter's in a world of pain. But anyway, coming back, Matt, to your example, back at the Corn Exchange in Cambridge, and in answer to the question, so it might not be that Suede have walked away with 12 grand more. It might be that their tour costs are 12 grand more. Or that their fee after costs is possibly more than Maximo Park will be getting, particularly given Suede's current resurgence. They're probably worth a fair few bob now, I guess, in a fee. But the one thing I did go and have a look. Although it's obviously a higher price ticket, the Suede gig's already sold out. Well, I think there are still tickets left for Maximo Park. So, a lot of variable costs to be taken into account. And I mean, as much as I'd like to go into other direct comparisons between ticket prices, every tour is different. I think that's the thing to take away from this, Matt. Every tour is different and will cost a different amount of money to put on. Having said that, you do get to a point where it's the certain bands, I think, playing similar size venues, ticket prices sort of roughly start to match. So if you look at Maximo Park, their ticket price in London is 41 quid, I think, in London. They're doing Brixton. And our secret agent said £41. That's pretty much a standard ticket price for Brixton Academy. For comparison, I think Black Star standing tickets 54. Everything is also £41. Pendulum in the seats, that's 49. Newton Faulkner standing slightly cheaper, £38. So it's a complicated kind of equation, this, but you will find tickets sort of finding a level, which I guess is partly down to audience expectation, really, because you kind of look around and go, yeah, that's probably a £40 ticket, because the other time I went to Brixton, that was a £40 ticket. And you're only going to sit up and notice if your favourite band is suddenly charging £75 when everyone else is charging 40 quid. But this is the equation. How much can we charge minus how much we need to spend plus how much do we want to earn equals ticket price. There you have it. Any live music touring professionals who have anything you'd like to add to this, or indeed a much better way of explaining this than I possibly have just done?
I think that was perfect. It was great.
Get in touch. Does it make sense? Does that make sense to you?
It does, and I think, like you say, it's because we've talked something about bands struggling, and it comes down to some of those costs you can't control. You can control how much pyro you have or don't have, but you can't control the cost of petrol, homes, and that. So it makes sense then, because then if your costs suddenly shoot up, but you've already set the ticket price, you're in trouble, aren't you? Even if you have sold out a venue, suddenly your costs can increase.
Well, yeah, because if you've organised because you'll have agreed a fee, won't you, as the band, the agent will have gone and negotiated on your behalf your fee, and that's your fee. But your fee, yes, will have to cover costs of, imagine arriving in town where there's a big event and you haven't realised that your gig is the same weekend as an international football match, and you can't buy a hotel room for less than £100 when it should have cost you 50. Yeah, that's one of the problems. But you'll have your fee. There'll be all the costs to, obviously everyone else who's, putting the gig on, right down to, as our agent said, marketing and everything. So all this has to come out of a ticket price. It's amazing how many different places your ticket money that you have paid, the money you have spent on that ticket, how many different places that money will end up eventually. I think that's the point. But it's it's slightly more complicated than I thought it was going to be when I saw that question originally, Matt. But thank you very much. Price of Music Podcast at gmail.com. is the email address for your own questions. Because I've banged on quite a long time with that one. I don't think we're going to get through another one in this episode, but we will hold on to the inquiries we've had so far, and we'll do another one of these sooner rather than later. So do keep your questions coming. As I say, it's the price of music podcast at gmail.com. And can I just mention here that we have a bonus episode arriving for you later in the week, which will be my interview with Lord Kevin Brennan, who is leading the fan-led review into live and electronic music, collecting the thoughts of music fans in a survey, the results of which will then be presented to government. It's an amazing opportunity for us all to participate and try to shape the discussions around music at government level. We'll talk more about that on, I think it will be available on Friday, that episode, although Patreon super fans, you can hear it right now wherever you listen to our extra bit of the show. So where the lock-in would usually be, you can listen to that Kevin Brennan interview already. Right. Thank you very much for listening this week. We're here every Wednesday. As I always say, if you like what we're trying to do, please tell your friends or colleagues, leave us a review online or big us up on your socials. Alternatively, to become a super fan and support the show with a few bob, you'll find details of how you can sign up at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. Thank you once again for your time. Nice to see you, Stuart. See you next week. Look after yourselves, everyone. Bye for now.